Question number 2, Alec Rowley.
Thank you. Earlier this week, Presiding Officer, this Parliament voted in favour of calling for a halt to the rollout of universal credit across the United Kingdom. The rollout so far is badly flawed, and the 6-week delay will cause untold misery for tens of thousands of families up and down this country. This Parliament now stands with most of Civic Scotland in calling for a halt to the rollout until the structural issues built into the system are resolved. Will the First Minister and her government now make the strongest possible representations on behalf of Parliament and the people of Scotland to stop the rollout of universal credit?
First Minister.
Yes, we will. Indeed, we have already been doing that and making an argument to the UK Government that universal credit should not be further rolled out until it can have confidence and demonstrate to the public its confidence that that system works properly. I recall visiting Inverness during the recent election campaign and talking there to people who operate a food bank, but also to people who are already recipients of universal credit, who told me about the delays and the impact and consequences of those delays, people getting into debt, people running up significant rent arrears, and huge misery, stress and anxiety being caused to some of the people in our country who are already in a very vulnerable situation. I think that is completely unacceptable, and I don't think any government in good conscience should continue with the rollout of universal credit while those concerns continue. So we will continue to make that case strongly to the UK Government. Of course, as well as the vote in the Chamber this week also saw coming into force some of the flexibilities around universal credit that this Government has insisted on using new powers, allowing for more frequent payments and for housing components to go direct to landlords. That is perhaps a small way, but a significant way in which we can help to make sure that the most vulnerable are being properly cared for. But I have significant concerns, very serious concerns about universal credit and the misery it will cause, and I hope that we can join together to call on the UK Government to do the right thing.
Alec Rowley.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I think where this Parliament can work together, this Parliament should work together in the interests of the people of Scotland. This morning we have learned from the Macmillan Cancer Support that the cuts to employment support allowance are affecting nearly 300 people living with cancer in Scotland. Let me be clear, these are cruel Tory cuts that make a mockery of Theresa May's claim and indeed Ruth Davison's claim that the Tories want to build a country that works for everyone. Labour will fight these cuts in Westminster, but can we protect people now? Reversing cuts for people living with cancer would cost £400,000. Reversing them for everyone affected by this would cost £14 million next year. Will the First Minister use the powers of this Parliament to reverse these cuts and support these people in their time of need?
First Minister.
As I think we have demonstrated by our actions, this Government will act where we can to mitigate the worst impacts of UK welfare cuts. Since 2013, we have already invested more than £350 million to support low-income families who have been affected by the changes we've seen already. And of course, we know that the benefit cuts imposed by the UK Government since 2010 are expected to reduce welfare spending in Scotland by almost £4 billion a year by the end of this decade. We will look carefully at the case that Macmillan Cancer Support is making today. And of course, as we heard just before First Minister's question started, the draft budget of the Scottish Government will be published in December, and we'll consider this in line with other decisions that we have to consider. It is important to point out, though, and I'm sure Alec Rowley is aware of this, that employment and support allowance is not one of the benefits that is being devolved to this Parliament. It will remain a reserved benefit, and of course it is one of the benefits that is to be rolled into universal credit. Let me say just finally, we will mitigate where we can, but as I've said previously, and this is something I think all of us across this Parliament really must appreciate, when the UK Government makes these cuts, these wrong-headed and, in many respects, this one included, deeply immoral cuts. They save money from doing that. They don't pass a portion of that saving on to the Scottish Government. So any mitigation we put in place involves us taking money from other parts of the Scottish budget. Now, we will do that where we can, but I think everybody looking at this and looking at the scale of the cuts that I've just spoken about, £4 billion a year by the end of this decade, would know that the Scottish Government cannot mitigate every welfare cut that the UK Government makes. Of course, if we had power over all of these benefits and all of the money that supports these benefits, we could take very, very different decisions. And I hope one day Labour will join us in calling for the complete devolution of all welfare powers and responsibilities and budgets to this Parliament.
Alec Rowley.
The First Minister in her programme of government did announce that she was bringing forward a number of papers that would set the case for more powers for this Parliament, and certainly the Labour Party look forward to these papers coming forward where we can work together, and where it makes sense to have powers in this place, then that's where the powers should be. Can I also make clear that I understand the point that she makes about continually mitigating the welfare cuts that are coming for the Tories, and Labour's answer to that is that we want a general election as soon as possible. We have a government in Westminster that is bankrupt of ideas and no place to go, and we will work for that general election and work to put Jeremy Corbyn into Downing Street. But can I say this? £400,000 from a government budget of £30 billion is not a lot to stop the Tory attack on cancer patients. But for those people and their families, it will certainly mean a lot. And I do hope that the First Minister will look at this. If the First Minister won't take action, then Labour will table amendments to the Social Security Bill in order to deliver this. Saying that we want a different type of social security system, one based on dignity and respect, is all well and good, but people do want to see action. Will the First Minister move beyond those warm words, work with Labour to reverse these cuts and to address the appalling welfare reforms that are affecting so many people so badly up and down Scotland? First Minister.
Well, there's were a few points in Alec Rowley's question. I think there was a question in there somewhere. Firstly, in terms of his characterisation of the shambolic Tory government at Westminster, I absolutely agree. Watching the letters literally fall off the stage set yesterday was like watching an episode of Fawlty Towers. It was so awful. But there is a serious point here. This is a shambolic, chaotic Tory Westminster government that is doing real damage day in and day out to people right across Scotland and right across the UK.